Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Will Schwartz. I'm the president of the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project, and we're thrilled to be able to bring this program to everyone this morning. One of the joys of the work that we've been doing the last couple of years, it's been two and a half years actually, has been the opportunity to get to know and work with so many incredible people, and not the least of which is Mr. Diggs. One of the things that I've really come to appreciate from reading his book actually is how vibrant and rich the communities, the historic Black communities in Baltimore were, and it's so critical that we hold on to those memories and that knowledge, so that all of our lives are enhanced by being able to enjoy and learn those stories and appreciate that culture. So right now I'm going to introduce Carol Brooks, who is going to be the host for the rest of the program. Carol?
Thanks, Will. Good morning, everybody. So glad to have you all join us for such a wonderful occasion and a wonderful time to actually pay tribute to someone who has done something that without his single-handed efforts, there would not be documented history of African-American culture in Baltimore County. And so we wanted to take a moment, first of all, to have an opportunity to hear Mr. Diggs' story. And I have a feeling that many of the people on the call today have heard his story, have participated in his tours, but I've been working with him for several years, and I've told everybody that I know that if you've never heard Mr. Diggs speak, or if you've never participated in any of his events and forums, you've missed a treat. And so we wanted to take an opportunity in a virtual environment, first of all, to get an opportunity to pick his brain a little bit and allow him to tell his story for those who haven't heard it, but also to celebrate the 5-year anniversary of the Diggs Johnson Museum. I'm so hurt that we can't gather in person, but I couldn't let this year go by without paying tribute to Mr. Diggs and the board of the Diggs Johnson Museum and all of the people who made that happen. So I'm just going to be prompting some questions, and this is pretty informal. We're going to have Mr. Diggs speak on a few topics, but if we don't answer some of the questions that you might have, feel free to put them in the chat room. And if it doesn't come up within the time that Mr. Diggs is speaking, Heather Gerhardt is helping us to monitor the chat room, and we'll try to get your questions in as well. And towards the end of the session, we will have an opportunity to open up the mic and let folks speak to Mr. Diggs or ask questions or give pay tribute towards the end of the program. So I am not going to spend a lot of time with an introduction of Mr. Diggs. He is a renowned author and historian in Baltimore County, Maryland. And as I mentioned, if it weren't for his work, we wouldn't have a lot of the documented history available to us and available for future generations. So I'd like to start, first of all, by thanking you, Mr. Diggs. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself if you can, or Will, if you can unmute Mr. Diggs. And I'd like to actually hear a little bit more of your story before you were an author and historian. I'd kind of like to hear the story of Louis Diggs and how you grew up and what your experiences were before you started in the world of historic preservation.
Well, okay. I was born in the Sandtown part of no, I wasn't born there. I was born out in Hose Height. But I spent most of my life okay. You could tell my age already. I just said the place where I was born. Sandtown on Stricker Street, right at the edge, the corner of what Douglas High School is. And now I grew up not poor, but under the poor, which thought I would never get out of. I had 4 siblings and no father. Mother and father were married, but he opted to desert his family. So there we were in at least 1929 when my oldest brother was born, and I was born in 32. And my mother, who was a school teacher, actual school teacher, fell in love with the wrong person. I won't say that because she loved that man her whole life. We had to hold her back where they said he was coming to Baltimore, but he abandoned us. And there was no food. Back in 1932, when I was born, there was no food. If your mother, your parents couldn't provide for you, you just simply did not eat. There was no food. In our area, thank goodness for St. Peter Claver Catholic Church, there wouldn't be anything at all. The city wouldn't do anything for you. And anyhow, we got along okay. My mother's father would come by, especially at the edge of summer, take us out to Druid Hill Park and show us the difference between weeds and, oh, what's the name of that thing? And we would cut them down. It's on the tip of my tongue, and we'd gather a lot of it. But life was nice. We had friends. We didn't know anything beyond that small part of Sandtown. The only white people I saw was the Jew that owned the corner store. And of course, the policeman who would occasionally come through the community. And you did not fool with the police. If he stopped and asked you a question, you must answer his question and you must not look at him in the eyes. No one told me that. I knew as you go along in this environment, you know, what to do, because we all have seen what they do to Black men, and it treated them terrible. But anyhow, we survived. I did not like school. I did go to 10th grade, and it should have been 11 because I failed one year. And I just simply didn't like school. But I had this feeling inside of me that I can't explain it, but there was a lady, a police officer named Sergeant Violet Hill White. Older Black people knew who she was. And with her, it's only the kids in school that reached the age of, I think it was 18 or 17, that must go to school. Well, I would go out to cut school and go out to Druid Hill Park, and there was this pool where they rented boats, and they had this wide thing around it, and I would lie there and daydream, dream about the future, dream about anything except school. Well, finally, I just said the heck with it. 1950, during the break, they told us that if you could go to the Maryland National Guard, there was a Black unit there. And you can, if you go and spend the summer with them, learning to march, you get paid and you get to keep your uniform on all the time. So Sydney, my friend Sydney Dorsey, who was on the same block with me, we both thought, if we go back to school and wear a uniform, that would attract the girls. Well, we both joined. and it wasn't too bad. I did like it. But when the Korean War broke out on June 25th, we were in summer camp down in Virginia. And again, that's another point in my life when I saw how African Americans were treated. My unit had been in the Black National Guard since 1872. Lots of people not aware of that. They existed as a separate unit from 72 to 1957. In any case, but let me tell you what we were a service unit. When we had mass formation, and that's almost every day, and you march around the field to this military music. And really, it teaches you really to really keep in step. And as a service unit, it was several of us, I guess. I seem to think it was. Anyhow, when we got to the 231st Transportation Truck Battalion, the music, the military music stopped. And then they played I Wish I Was in Dixie, these kinds of music for the Blacks. And I remember one colonel that I interviewed for the book I wrote about it, and he went into depth to say that, you know, that's just the way it is, and you have to go along with it. But that was my first. My second was I made a mistake, and I went into the PX, and I wanted to a little bit of money. I wanted to buy something, and I stood in line. I had about 4 lines, and when it got up to my line, nobody, they didn't say anything to me. They were whites and all behind me. And one of the sergeants come over and told me, said, "Come on over here, Lewis, that's the white line. You have to stand in the colored line." And I just kind of thought that was odd. I really thought if you were in the military, you know, you were pretty free. But I did enjoy it. I really did. There was 2 of 4 units that the Maryland National Guard activated the battalion headquarters. And fortunately, it was my company, the 726 Truck Company. We were in Korea by 1950, by the end of 1950. And one unit, 147th, they sent to Germany, and the 165th, they sent to Virginia. Well, when we got to Korea in December of 1950, on a troop ship, they said there were thousands of service units. After this big push, I forget what campaign was going on, but the big push was further up into North Korea, and they ran out of food and ammunition, and that's where this great need was for truck companies like we had. So when we got there, I don't know why, but my unit, the 726 unit, they grabbed us first off of the troop ship. And we thought we would remain with the National Guard, the headquarters of the National Guard. And I said, no, right away, we were sent to the 1st Cavalry Division. And unfortunately, when we finally got to where we had to go, the trucks, we were the type that we were not trained on, 2.5 ton 6x6s. We weren't trained on that particular model. And it was all frozen in ice. But anyhow, we finally got things going. Then off we went to the 1st Cavalry Division. And of course, I knew by then things were not good for Blacks, because the way they treated us, it was like it's World War II. We had to be in our own area. We couldn't go in their I want to say cafeteria, their place to eat. We had to set up ourselves. And I kind of thought that was odd, but things were moving so fast. Oh my goodness. And finally, people found out in my unit that I could type. And there was another battalion being formed, 70th Truck Battalion. And that was another thing that showed me this damn army ain't integrated, because it was all white officers and all black enlisted men. And I thought it wasn't to be like that. I knew in the National Guard, of course. I didn't think it would be like that. And I was scared as the devil, because, never having competed with the white kids, I just thought in my mind that I couldn't compete with them. Since I was a little teeny boy, I loved to type. And my sister had a typewriter and she hit it every day, and I found it every day. And I learned to type. And I even took commercial in high school. I had to down there fight every day with 49 boys and one girl in class. But I mastered that. And when we started, it wasn't bad with, working with the white people. They could not keep up with me in typing. I could type so much, I could take a report, grasp so much in my head, can't grab nothing now. And that skill took me to a nice retirement where I am today. But after service, I stayed 20 years, thoroughly enjoyed it, spent half of it with the ROTC department out of Morgan State. Stayed out there about 8 years, I guess, when I once went to Korea, came back to the place. And I did enjoy working with youngsters who became generals and colonels. I would run across them in retirement life. But I did stay almost 21 years. Then I then took a job the very next day teaching high school ROTC in Lulu High School in Washington, D.C. But that wasn't my real field. I ended up after 20 years, I was the assistant to the personnel director. And I was set to take that job, but I ran into politics. And after 19 and a half years, I said, the heck with it, I quit. And then in my retirement years, something happened in the Winners Lane area of Catonsville, where I lived. And my sons would not let me stay home and just look at television all day. I think I was maybe, I don't know, 38, 58, I don't know how old I was. Anyhow, I had retired from 40 years, so I must have been 60 something. And they wouldn't let me put up this, no, I put it up anyhow, this big dish, watch TV. It didn't cost anything, but A&M said I must go down to the high school. There was a problem with the boys, and I would make a nice role model. They never knew it, but I appreciate it, because I thought they were going to say I should go down here and be a substitute. And I didn't feel like being committed to any permanent job. So I did go. And Don Moeller, who was the principal there, oh, he loved the idea. And you know, something happened on, actually, it was about maybe the second or third day. I was just walking the halls, chatting with the guys. Well, I knew every one of them. So this one boy, he didn't know me, and I think I bumped into him. And I said, oh, grabbed him by the arm. I said, son, I'm sorry. You should have at least said you were sorry to me as an adult. And he said, look, man, I'm on my way to school. I ain't got no time to talk with you. I said, that's not the right way to talk to anyone. And I just chatted a little bit with him. And when the chat was over, I said to him something like, Martha and Leroy are not going to like what I'm going to say to them. He said, what do you mean? I said, ain't that your mother and father and you live up on Booker Road? Changed completely. That boy running around telling everybody, don't be careful there. Mr. Diggs is from, it got so good that they made me become a substitute teacher and teach a little bit. So that was okay. And I taught this one class on how to research your roots, because that was what I was doing. And Mr. Moeller had gotten together a class for me of children, just no necessary races, just learn a little bit about genealogy. So we had this semester-long class. And when it was all over, this one boy said to me, Mr. Diggs, I don't think none of us can turn in how we happened to get here on Winners Lane. We know about churches and schools, but how did we get here? And I said, well, they had this on their report, and I guess they were afraid that I was going to mark them against it. And all of the kids came up to me and said, Sticks, could you help us find out when did our community begin? I said, look, I live in Catonsville. That's only because I married a woman from Catonsville, and I love it here, and I'm staying. But I am basically from Baltimore City. And anyhow, they wouldn't let me go. So I agreed that I would do a little checking. And, you know, that's when I found out that, because I couldn't find anything. And that's when I found out there was no documented history of African-American life in Baltimore County. Yes, there was all around, you know, if you knew you can go to planning and find something or whatever. And that bothered me because my family, though, come from Baltimore County. You know, I was born in the city. They come out of Piney Grove, just above Ricestown. So it bothered me, and then I ran into some people who, while I was out trying to get some information, one was a very good friend of mine, Linwood Johnson. He was a planner, and he had tons of information on these communities. And oh boy, he just loved the idea that I showed some interest. And of course, Adrienne Jones, who she has pushed me, and she really has got me highly motivated. That's why, even though I've written these 13 books already, I still want to write more. And I can't even hold a pen good. And my fingers on the typewriter, I don't remember about 2 seconds worth of information, so I'm extremely slow. But in any case, I found out that Baltimore County had designated 40 communities of African Americans and 35 churches and something else that was in. How that came about, well, I'll explain to you later. Anyhow, they had designated and the Winners Lane was one of them. So I said, maybe this should be my goal, to write about these 40 historic communities. And I was totally wrong in saying they were historic, because under the Secretary of Interior standards, they were not historic. Baltimore County just designated them. I believe Linwood said they was just trying to satisfy them for what, I don't know. But I decided I was going to dig into those units. So it took me about 25 years to do it. And I did start with Winners Lane because there people knew me, and I didn't know a darn thing about much beyond the Winners Lane community. And I was there that we had our children. I have older son, Bunky, who unfortunately I lost a couple of years ago. And Blair, who's, I don't know what he's looking at the door. There's Blair, he's my second one, and hopefully he's the one that's gonna carry my legacy on. And Terry, I don't see Terry, but he may be in the chat room. And one other son who wasn't born here. We were in Germany for 4 years, and I don't know, I guess my wife and I got a little frisky over there and brought back Freddie, who was our youngest son. And you know, people knew me, and I didn't have much problems. Some problems getting people to interview me. I made a plan. I said that I would try to find, looking for history. And I knew I couldn't do much finding history from a 30-year-old man or a 40-year-old man or even a 50-year-old person. So I set an age that I would start the survey with, and that was 70. You had to be at least 70 years old for me to interview you. They didn't like it from the get-go, but as the books began to be known, then they then open up. That was maybe the first 2-3 books.
So can I ask, is that what led into your work with the oral history interviews?
Exactly right.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit more about your methodology? And you've already determined, you set an age, but how did you identify the folks that you wanted to interview, and what were some of the stories that you heard from them?
Okay, good question. Good question. I really knew youngsters couldn't help me in this endeavor, and I felt that youngsters, even people like myself, might come along and wish to share history of these Black men like myself. I want my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren to know something about my life. And I'm sure there are many African-American men feel the same way. But in any case, I went to the church was my primary source. And my church, Grace AME Church, almost 2/3 of Catonsville went to Grace AME Church, even though there were many others. So, and they knew everything. Yeah, they knew everything, everybody. And most of the people that they recommended, they would not let me interview them. I don't know why, because I still feel like I'm not a native Catonsvillian. They accept my children who are born in Catonsville quicker than they would accept me. Now this young lady, who I enjoyed interviewing her, she was 100 years old. Miss LaVia. She lived out in Long Green, small Black community in Northern County that was hooked up with Long Green and I'll get the name of the other one, Glen Arm. Blacks didn't, they had already left Glen Arm. There was no Blacks there. Those that were there had just sort of migrated to Long Green, but they were always close together. And this is just some idea of the transcript that I finished from my interview with her. Now, for sure, her mother was not a slave, but her grandmother was. And she lived a long time with her grandmother. But she wouldn't talk too much about it. And look, I am doing this, I am a neophyte. I don't know what the heck I'm doing, but I knew, I should have talked with someone who could have schooled me on how to get people to talk about a particular subject. And my goal was on everyone that I talked with who knew their grandmother or further back, I tried to get them to talk about it in an interview. And I would say 99% of them said, Mr. Diggs, I'm sorry. That has bothered me all my life. I just cannot talk about it. I'm sorry. They would say very, very little about, wanted to get some idea what it was like, primarily here in Baltimore County, what slavery was like, that people who were at least secondhand, had parents, and I know they were there in the Civil War because I've already tracked them down. And I'm almost positive that some of Blacks in the county, including mine, the DIGGES, who were in the Civil War, I know they fought in the Revolutionary War. And I understand in my research that Blacks were not allowed. They didn't keep their names. So it was difficult to get names of their slaves that actually fought. I mean, that's difficult. But Miss LaVia, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Say what you were going to say about Ms. LaVia, but I wanted to know how many people ultimately did you interview? And tell us a little bit about some of the memories that they actually would share with you.
Okay. I really don't know how many people that I interviewed. I moved to 3 different places, and all of my stuff was just I just don't know. I've captured at least 100, maybe 125 of little cassettes like this. And I'm so worried that the information on here could be almost 30 years old, and they need to be saved, or and this is what Miss LaVia, and these are the ones I'm looking for. I have found at least, I guess maybe 125, 130 of these types of things that I taped on. And I know I taped quite a few on CDs and DVDs. And I've only found so far maybe, I don't know, 20, 30, but I know I got some in my crawl space downstairs where I still have a lot of my information stored. But most of the people uh, I like there. They really gave me and whoever listens to them good information of what that community was like when they were children. And that was maybe, late 1800s, early 1900s. Good information. And every one of these, I typed, I transcribed them. Transcription is perfect, as you can see right here that I shared with Carl. That's the actual thing that's on whatever I typed it on. And images. Most people were willing to share images. Any images they had, I got at least, I don't know, 7,000, 8,000 of them. Awful lot from these communities. Everybody trusted me with their pictures and let me scan them. And I made one mistake. Boy, I'm a dummy. On all the pictures, most of them, I don't know how many I have that are on boards, boards like you see in school where there's a large center made out of cardboard. And then it has the wings that come out. And I can put 25 images on them. So, including their picture. Well, telling me, I made them sign the back of the pictures, giving me permission to use their information. But then now they're on the boards. If anyone say you must prove something, I have to pull this off the board. How dumb can you be? But I got the information.
Well, I'm not going to say that that's dumb because you've been absolutely brilliant. So it sounds like between these oral history interviews and the memories that you've shared of your experiences with the students, that this was the impetus not only for writing your books, but also for the beginnings of the Dig Johnson Museum, or some way to collect a repository or to leave your archival histories to the next generation. Yes. Why don't we start talking about the foundations of renovating the church, the restoration of the church into the Dig Johnson Museum? How did that happen?
Okay, well, before our museum, we were working out of the Historical Society of Baltimore County. Oh my goodness, they were so nice to us, and they have so much information, including African American, and they just shared with us. And this was interesting. I can't think of his name, but anyhow, when I don't know where it was. I was with Adrian Jones insisted that I go with them. They were writing, I forget which anniversary book, and she mentioned to me, why don't you go there and put some African American history in our books, because I don't believe there's any in any of the books. So that was a good idea. So I went up to the Historical Society, and I worked by the year putting the last book that they put together. And it was UMBC had the contract. Oh my goodness, as they put things together, they were surprised of the history that I had accumulated so far, and the images and things. So when the book was done, completed, Glenn Johnston was the director at that time. And he approached me and he said, Louis, our board wants you to take there was a building beside it. It was called a pest house. Every county had a pest house, and that's where the poor went, or the real sick people went. And that was at a time when the arms, when the building now, that's when it was the arms house. And that building, small building beside is where they put the, anyhow, I like that idea because all the information that was in the Historical Society was great. And just below it, we were up on top of a hill, and just below it was the Pikesville, I think it was Pikesville County Library. So resource was good around there. And that's why he asked me, he said, our board wanted me to try to acquire the this building and make it into the Louis S. Diggs Research Center. So that was a little bit beyond me, but then again, as time went on, we went in the building, and of course, there's absolutely nothing in there. And as I researched it, really turned me off on some of the pictures that I had seen. Anyhow, we went and we did acquire the building. Adrian went with me over there, and I already had an architect on board. So we looked at the building, and the possibility looked good. So architect said, now, Mr. Diggs is going to cost maybe over 500,000 to put this together. So Adrian said, take the building, Mr. Diggs. Because the possibility looked good. So anyhow, I took the building. And as we went through the process, Cabinet must have changed his mind because even though he supported it fully, they were thinking, I know, about building additional county buildings. And I think they wanted that building that I had. They wanted that building. Every time they would call me down to talk to the lawyers, and I did have a lawyer on my team, Richard, and we would go and talk, and they said, well, you know, Mr. Diggs, if the building gets a leak in the roof, you know you have to fix it. I said, fix it. You're not selling me the building or giving me the building. This is a renter owner thing. You have to fix it. The building is historic anyhow. They went over there several times, said the heck with it. And then during that time, that's when the possibilities of having the church that you're seeing, Cherry Hill AUMP, African Union Methodist Protestant, a church in Granite that was slowly falling apart. Oh my goodness, I wish Carol could show a picture of what it first looked like, because it was in the woods off of the road. I call myself a historian, and the lady, I can't think of her name, who really helped me out in the Granite Historic Area. And she kept saying, just go down off the road, you can't miss it. And I'm going up and down off the road. And then somebody said, just look to your right, the building is there. And the building was almost covered with, with grass and all, and they had sort of building. And I did not like this building, I didn't like it. Anyhow, Adrian worked up for us and the community, a place for us to share our history. And she arranged for, it was at one time was a $400,000 grant that included a bit of work on one of the safe houses that I can't say I uncovered, but nobody ever knew it was a safe house, but it was, and over on Bowling Road. And
what other things did you run into as you were doing the renovations? I remember you telling me that you unearthed a burial or a grave site that you had to kind of stop the work?
Well, yes, as the contractor was doing his work, clearing everything, and we already had it surveyed or whatever you do. I had a company out in Pennsylvania that made sure that we knew where all the grave sites were, and there was really none. And they mentioned to me that the map showed that's a water area and things just wash away. And I knew that they didn't have huge caskets or whatever you call them to bury Black people in. So it was obviously just cloth or something. I don't know what it was. And they said it had really washed away, except for one that was not showing. And they marked it. And it was on our plans, on our drawings, where it was clearly. And God dog it, as they went through it, bam, they hit right into that site. And it was right at the edge of the extension that we did. And of course, I stopped the work. I knew that's the first thing you had to do. Didn't know what to do after that. So down at just a little bit down on Dogwood Road, there is a cemetery, King's Memorial Park, and Eric March, who was very helpful to me in my whole project. And he said, Mr. Diggs, you're really in some trouble. That it's going to take you a long time to get this thing squared away. And he gave me an idea what to do. He said, you have to get the county state approval on this. So I went through all this process, and finally I got hold of it. And I just loved the way that he was so helpful to us. And after we went through all this hassle, he asked me, he said, do you really have an area that you can bury the remains in that church cemetery? I said, of course. So we made that arrangement. And Eric, he gave me nobody would touch anything. This was a concrete grave site, and it was open, and you could see the remains and everything, and it just spooked everybody. But it ended up, Eric March helped us take care of everything, and we finally got it done, reburied him, and I have it marked. I started to go to one of the local churches and have a little say over his grave, how sorry that we were about disturbing his rest. And I said, hey, I don't know how old I was. I said, look, I feel that I can do this myself, and I did. And I haven't made the right marker, but I have it marked, so I know where it is.
And so you also mentioned that you had to build an extension onto the church. So this photo is the extension that you were talking about. So how did it progress? How long did it take to turn from this? And then we're going to go into the grand opening, or what did it take to actually create the Diggs Johnson Museum?
Yeah, you really got me here. You were on when we started the building of Restoring, right? Blair? Do you remember when we started? Oh, you got to unmute yourself real quick.
Yeah, wasn't it around like 2014?
Yes. We were going through a strong hassle. By then, 2014 is when we started. When we got the proper clearances to do things, that's when we made the extension. We really wanted a walkway rather than close to the building, but we had the original siding was on the church, not the one that you see in the old videos. We took that off and there was a siding. And the siding was in good shape. We saved as much as we could because that would help in the when we go to make it historic. So we decided instead of having the walkway, make the extension right up to the church and take the siding off from the back. And thanks be to God, there was enough for us to have the building covered with its original thing. But we went through almost a year, I guess, getting it all together, going through the process, and boom, this is it today. I don't know if people have any knowledge about why did you use a red door? And I know somebody's gonna come up and ask me that, but that's the usual color during the old days that churches, all of them began to use this color. We decided that we would keep it the same. And as you can see, our building is historic. We plan on clearing our property more into the rear and making on this side. We have a parking lot on the south side of it, but we're going to put a larger one on this side of it. And since we are now under the Patapsco Greenway Heritage, we will definitely need more room to bring in more people that are involved in that program into the granite area where we can share the history of African-American life in that county and throughout the county. But we need a larger bus area to make all this possible. So we will start pretty soon. But this young lady, you can't see her, next to me, she's on our board. She's a member now, but she was so helpful to me. She would often come up and open the place up for the contractors and kept track of things. And I see another board member look like she's taking a picture. And Adrian Jones, where they, okay, go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is I'm apologizing in advance because I was a newbie when I was at the Diggs Johnson Museum grand opening. I was just learning how to use cameras and doing it very poorly, but I want to see if Will can play a little video of the ribbon cutting. It's very short. Hopefully it plays and we shall see. So forgive me if it's not the best quality, but I did capture one memory from the Diggs Johnson Museum.
Good.
All right, Mr. Diggs. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Louis Diggs. I'm the president of the Friends of Historical Ontario, AUMP, Inc. And after 15 years, we have finally succeeded in converting this old historic church into a museum. And we appreciate you all coming out to enjoy this moment with us. We really do. And, well, we'll meet the board members anytime. Yes, ma'am. That's president number one. I'm president number two. You're number one. No. So anyhow, we're going to have our ribbon cutting and we just hope and pray that you guys just enjoy what we're going to present to you today. Okay? So, what do we do?
That's around.
Turn around. Wait, it's the door's unlocked. Okay. And then we have the audience participation, and you do count down from 3. No. Yes, cut. Wait a minute. 3, 2, 1.
It was nice.
Yeah, so it was a wonderful occasion. I have so many wonderful memories. I was exhausted by the end of the day. There were so many people there. And I know that many of the people who've been supporting the museum are on the call now. So I'm mindful of the time. I'd like to spend maybe the next 15 minutes or so talking about that day. And I've got some photos and I'll just put them up. But if you could, just tell us about that day and some of the folks that were there and the significance of their attendance. And there were a couple of things that you did that I'd like to share that I thought were really unique. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about it. So if I can get back to my slideshow and share my screen.
Basically, what all of us are doing, we're taking individual opportunities to share, the many images that we put up that particular day, and just sharing history on this particular slide. Hey, Adrian, every time I see Adrian, she has been my greatest, I don't know, mentor, whatever you call it, but she is, up to this day, she's never let me fail on the many things that I've done. Now, what about, I'm trying not to talk too much so to see your images. Oops.
I'm having a technical difficulties. Is that better?
Yeah,
Yes.
better. And it's just that we were all trying to share as much as we could with, with the, there's Adlai. And there's a lady whose sister, and this young lady up here, Mickey, marvelous display, marvelous on the history of Bond Avenue primarily, and her display, it will just make you feel good to just be able to actually see. Here's her display primarily. Now on that lower left corner, that's the only thing that almost killed my son Blair getting it out of this lady's house, but we got it out and we're going to restore it. But these other things are things from Miss Mickey. I can't even think of her name, it's terrible. But 90% of it comes from her area. And we got a story behind. You see up on the right-hand side, you see that potbelly stove? Blair found one for our museum. We all just so tickled pink, and it is gorgeous. And a lady donated to way up in, I don't know where, it was cold wherever we went, and security. Now we can have the museum look more like it. And this lady is, oh my goodness, she's going there. I believe she was the sister of the last trustee who gave us the church. And I promised her no, that's not her. Because the lady I promised, the sister, we wanted to see our progress on it was ready for viewing. And she passed and she did not see it. Oh, I see Tyler is checked in.
And Mr. Diggs, can I ask, this particular, these pictures represent, you had everyone sign a scroll when they came in.
Yeah.
And it was making a commitment to preserving this history and being good stewards of our history. Can you explain a little bit more about the whole concept of the scroll and what happened with the scroll?
Well, we wanted to have a, what do you call it when you put something away?
The time capsule?
Yeah, we wanted to have a capsule.
Uh-huh.
So, I know several of the board members worked on it. With that scroll, the people that was here, some images, those were the two primary things. The images dealing with the church and the conversion of the church, and whatever. And that's stored until 50 years from there when our museum would, but we just stored it, made a storage of it.
Yeah. What else went into the time capsule? I remember there was actually a ceremony in December to place the time capsule. What were some of the things you wanted people to find when they discovered the time capsule?
Now, Blair, you got to help me out on this. Can you? If not, I saw a couple of board members that are participating, that you were there. Take your video, unmute your video. Blair, could you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, could you go a little deeper into the things that we put in that time capsule and any other information?
Well, it's been a few years. I've kind of forgotten. I'm looking at it now. I've forgotten. I know we put the scroll. I forgot.
Well,
I remember the scroll went in there.
Yeah.
And I believe a copy of one of your books. If I'm not mistaken, I think either it all started on Winter's Lane.
no, this would be in the Granite book.
Yeah, I remember that. And as you can see, some of the hats that were placed in there.
Carol.
Yes.
Now I saw one of our board members, Ray. I know she's listening, and I'm wondering if I could call Ray up, and she was right there working with the project. And I want to see maybe Ray can help us. So can you let her talk?
Will, do you see Ray where you can unmute?
Oh my gosh. Let me see.
And actually what I'd like to do, these were the last of the photos. And so I just sort of wanted to open up the dialogue. I'm not sure if she's still online because we're having
I don't see her.
finding her.
It may not be, but I definitely saw her.
Had to leave. But
Yes.
I only saw, I think, one question come through the chat, but I didn't know if we wanted to open it up, if there were any other memories that any other board members wanted to share, or if Heather, if you saw any questions that came through, we can open up the floor to conversation. And then I'd like to also ask, before we jump into that, what I'd like to close with is asking you, Mr. Diggs, first of all, thank you so much for the legacy and all the hard work that you've done. You've created amazing footprints for those of us following behind you, who hope to take the baton, as you are begging us to take from you, and carry this wonderful treasury of collections into future generations. I was wondering, of all the things that you've done, what accomplishment are you most proud of? And what's the legacy that you'd love to leave behind?
Well, the one thing that I'm proud of it, and that is going to school. Like I mentioned earlier, my mother was a teacher, and me, I always wanted her attention, and that was terrible to me because she had 4 other children. But when I quit school, she cried, but thanks to God, I was able to go to school, and my mother saw me graduate from the University of Baltimore. And I was so tickled about that. And after my mother left, I just kept going. And I worked hard to get my master's from University of Baltimore. And this old boy, no, I know that could never happen. But boy, if I had gotten the highest degrees, boy, oh my goodness, Mom would be so proud of me. But just some people have been so helpful to me. Everybody, Baltimore County, it's just anything I needed, they helped me with. Books, they paid for every book. And you know, the funny thing about that, one year I kind of hung up, and I was mentioning to Adrian about it. And Adrian said, "What's your address?" Gave her address. She said, "You just have your half a check ready." Sure enough, next morning there she comes by and gives me $3,500. And I go in and I get the book published. That's why I said this woman just would not let me fail. And that's my greatest, I feel it's my greatest accomplishment. And I want to let people that are in the city now, boys that were like me, you know, there are ways out. There's always ways out. Mine was a good way using the Army. Look, everybody's not an infantryman. Everybody doesn't die. They go into the service and learn discipline, the skills that take them. Like, I'm not a rich man, but I sure in heck ain't poor, and I sure in heck am comfortable. I mean, God has been good to me. And it's amazing that I create these things. I didn't know how to write no darn book, but so many people supported me, and I want to thank them for it. I don't know if I answered your question, but I talk too darn much.
No, you don't. This was all about you today, Mr. Diggs. And I just want to thank you because you are an inspiration to me and so many others who only hope to be able to do a fraction of what you've done over the course of your history with no formal education, but just a passion for telling the untold stories of African Americans. And if nothing more, the legacy you've left me is the inspiration to find out my father's story and make sure those stories are told, and also to pass it on to the next generation, to encourage the next generation to get engaged in understanding this important history. So for me, that's my tribute to you. I thank you. And if there's anyone else who would like to say, there's lots of tributes coming to you in the chat room, but if there's anyone who would like to unmute yourselves and just say a few words, we've got a few more minutes, and I'd love for others to show their appreciation to Mr. Diggs while we have him here on this call.
Mr. Diggs, I'm an art teacher And I always think that art is a way of storytelling and history. And I try to teach my middle school students in Bowie just how important our stories are. And so much of what you said is just gonna help me pour right back into them some of the techniques and projects that we have coming up. So I just wanted to say thank you. I can't wait to get out in the open and actually visit your museum, and just thank you again.
Thank you.
Mr. Diggs, we did have a question from Lee Ryan wondering where people can find your books.
Well, and you might think this is crazy, but as I write these books, the purpose of my writing them, believe it, is not to sell them. I don't put them in any bookstores, anywhere. People that see my website or that are the museum that come on, that's when I sell them. But only because now this virus thing is up, I would go into schools and all, and I would give them to some of the kids that appear interested. When I take kids on tours, I always see that ones that really listen, I'd give them a book. And I don't understand why it seems like my books are not used to teach, not to teach, but so children from this county, and every one of them are in a county school. I don't understand why I don't hear anything from the school. I don't understand that. These kids' ancestors, most of them come from here. And look, my books are not, you can't use them to teach. They'll come apart pretty soon. I just want them in the libraries. That's what I want. Kids who would like to find something about their great-great-grandparents. If they're from the county, they can see where their great-great-grandfather participated in wars. Just their history. That's all I wanted to do. And God sent me a group of people now where I realized, look, 5 months, 4 months, I'll be 89 years old. And I know, look, I barely can get around now. But I know that this group taking all my books, all my images, and we're going to digitize them so that they can be kept for, well, until they run out. And I will give everything to my, she said the word, I can't think of, but everything, that's my legacy, my museum. And I'm going to fix it up so that everything will be over there. And I'm so appreciative of the group that's helping me. Just want to know about that. Anything else anybody like to chat about? I ain't got nowhere to go myself. Well, I love to talk.
Miss Carol, can I say something?
Yes, please.
Hey, my son.
So I'm Terrence Diggs. I'm Mr. Diggs' third down the line. So I just wanted to go into, and I'm gonna make this brief. So when my dad started off with, genealogy and everything, of course, I was young at the time, not so young anymore, but it made me feel like I knew where I came from. He installed in myself and my brothers where we came from at the beginning of this. So that first book he wrote, where it all started on Winter's Lane, prior to that, understanding my heritage, my family and everything, I think that was very valuable and has gotten me to the point where I am now in my lifetime. And I think that's been a very positive look. And if you look at some of what Mr. Diggs talked about, some of his beginning, I find it really strange in the way life works, because my life kind of parallels his in a way with the military. I started after college into the military, was in a truck unit, worked in the admin field in
Yes, you
offices
did.
and everything. And I've progressed myself all the way up to the point now where even though I'm not in Catonsville anymore, I do participate on his board, learning more and more of how this history here and everything that he's gathered, and find the value in it. My son, he's brought some valuable stuff as far as putting a lot of this stuff into a digital format, where we're reaching out to Twitter and Facebook, and he's putting it all together just to give us that digital footprint out into the world. He and the other board members always hear me talk about, well, we understand it's Baltimore County where his focus is, but it's a lot larger when you look at the big picture. I mean, we've brought up points like there's probably people in California that have history here in Baltimore County. And then they're not seeing this. So as I said, and I could go on all day, like the stuff that he's instilled in me, my dad, with the stuff he's instilled in me, I've progressed as well. I work for Howard County government. I'm a deputy CIO for technology in Howard County. So my successes, I always go back to my dad and what he's instilled in me. And as far as this board goes in this museum, my older brother being right behind him, I guess the baton will go to him someday. My son is, like I was talking about him, he's extremely interested in this type of stuff. And he's been working real close with the board. He just got put on the board probably, I don't know how long ago, Dad, maybe 2 months ago or so. And he brings across that new generation of information and the way it's portrayed. So I think that's valuable too. So hopefully we can carry on his legacy, not just me and my family, but a lot of the board members on there that bring in some very valuable, they put a lot of time and exposure to this museum. So that's where I want to leave it, but I appreciate everything he's done and what I've learned from him over the years. And I know we still have a long way to go. And it's, like I said, this is something, it's history. Can't change it. It's happened. He's collected that stuff. He's put it in writing and so forth. So that's all I want to say. And I appreciate everybody that attended today. I think this has been a very good forum you've put together. And thanks a lot.
I just want to say it's so nice to unofficially meet you, but thank you so much, because he actually did a lot to get the word out to people about this event. And just to say, you might have seen that this event was hosted by both the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project and the Intergenerational Griot Project, which is a passion project for me, because I'm trying to reconnect the younger generation with their history, but also trying to instill the importance of them telling their own stories. You know, we can't let this gap happen between the generations, but we also need to have these intergenerational dialogues, whereas the elder generations understand where the younger generations' stories are coming from, because they've got a whole different worldview. So your entire family is an inspiration for families and communities around the country, around the world. And so I thank you all. We have a few more moments, but I don't want to take up everyone's time. But if there's anyone else, oh, we did have a question in the chat. Denise Ball was asking,
Yes.
could you talk a
Where
little
did
bit more about Lenwood
Yes.
Johnson, the Johnson in the Diggs Johnson Museum?
Yes, thanks for bringing that up, because I had written it down myself to ask you to let me answer her question. Of course, I don't know if she'd have been listening from the very beginning, but I did mention how Linwood was so involved in all that I do. But Linwood, unfortunately, for years now, has medical problems. And he's in, like, not a nursing home, but he's in a home. And I'm glad you asked that question. That reminds me, I want to get his daughter, one of his daughters, on our board. Whereas I would be on the board, I wanted to do something on a permanent nature, reflecting both the Diggs and the Johnson. So I don't know if that answers her question, but Linwood, unfortunately, for years, I mean, the poor guy just been out of it. Anyone else? Come on, I know somebody got some questions.
Well, there's a lot coming through the chat room, but we will save the chat to make sure that you see all of the wonderful tributes that are being paid to you also in the form of the chat room as well. And we do only have 5 minutes, but maybe we should close the event out if there's no one else who has anything else to say, with just thanking everyone. Thank you so much, Will, for hosting as a part of the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project. Also, there were some donations made. So thank you for any of you who contributed. All of the proceeds from today's event are going to the Diggs Johnson Museum. And feel free to also go to their website if you'd like to contribute support. Part of what Mr. Diggs talked about, all of those cassettes that we are trying to digitize, we're hoping to create the Diggs Johnson or the Lewis Diggs collection, which will become an actual archived collection so that it has further reach beyond the walls of the museum. It's so important to preserve those legacies and those histories, but also make them more readily available to anyone who wants to access them. So we are pursuing grants to help us in that work. It costs money. It costs money to run a museum. And so any way you can support, if you love the story you heard today and you'd like to help, please support these kinds of initiatives throughout Baltimore County and anywhere, because museums are struggling, small organizations are struggling, and it requires public support in order to continue these types of programs and initiatives. And it is so necessary for a time such as this, when we're trying to, bring people back together instead of being divided, and having these courageous conversations about race and about our experiences, because what's been happening in Mr. Diggs' story, you could probably hear some of those same stories today. And so we need to keep the information flowing. We need to make sure the stories that have been untold get told, but also that we use this as a bridge between the generations and between people across the country. So I thank you so much. I thank you to Heather for helping me cull the chat room, and thank you for everyone who joined us today for this wonderful event. It was recorded, and we will make the recording available on the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project website, and I'm sure we'll make a link available if you go to the Diggs Johnson Museum website, so that so that anybody who wasn't able to be here today can listen to this wonderful event today. So I thank you so much. Mr. Diggs, you want to close us out?
Yeah, I would like to, and also I would like people to know that if they missed any question or had something later on, can I give them my email address so they can can always answer if they're interested in my books.
Yes.
My email address is Lewis, that's with the O, Lewis Diggs with a 2, Lewis Diggs 2 at Verizon.net. And that L is capped, but the D is small. And be glad to answer any questions. And thank you so much, Will and Heather and everybody that has helped our museum as much as you guys have. We truly, truly appreciate it. That's to say about the first video I ever took, I was a young man. Boy, look at me now. Just, maybe I should take his damn dog beard off. Maybe. Anyhow, thanks. And Scott, hey man, I'm so glad you don't get someone as important as you on these things. Really appreciate it. Appreciate you. But I appreciate everybody. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Diggs. God bless you.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
This
Thank
was
you.
wonderful.